Earlier we talked DOM or Document Object Model. I told you that when the browser reads the HTML document that is returned from the server, it constructs a document object model. Now let me show you this document object model in action. So once again, we're going to use Chrome DevTools. The shortcut on Mac is Shift, Command, and I. On Windows, it's probably Shift, Control, and I. I'm not really sure. So let's open up DevTools. Now in this lesson, we're going to look at the Elements tab. Now what we have here on the left side is our document object model. So we see the same elements that we created earlier in the course. We have the HTML element, head, body, and so on. But we have some additional elements that are injected by Live Server. For example, we have the script element and 2 divs. Don't worry about these. These are purely used by Live Server, so it automatically reloads our page. Now we can hover over any of these elements, and you can see that element highlighted on the screen. Now we can click on element, and on the right side, we can see the styles applied to this element. So look at the styles we defined for the image element, width, border radius, and so on. We can enable or disable these styles. So we can disable the width property, and now our image is big. We can bring it back. We can also change its value. So we can set it to, let's say, 50 pixels. Now our image is smaller. We can use the up and down arrows to change this value. It's pretty handy. So a lot of front-end developers use DevTools to play with these styles and get the look they want. Once they figure out the exact styles and their values, then they apply them in the code. Now one more thing. Over here, you can see where these styles have been applied. So in index.html on line 6, we can click on this link, and this takes us to the exact line of code where we wrote that style. Now we're currently on the Sources tab, so we can go back to Elements and inspect other elements. So this is the basics of inspecting elements using DevTools. We're going to talk about this in more detail in the future. The last thing we're going to cover in this section is validation. So as we write code, we may run into problems. If you have a typo in our code or don't use the right syntax or grammar, our web pages may not look as expected. In these situations, we can use a validator to identify the potential errors in our code. Like currently, we don't have any problems on this web page. It looks perfectly fine to me, but let's run it by the standard HTML validator. So we go to validator.w3.org. This is a standard markup validation service. We have 3 methods for validating our HTML markup. We can validate by an address if our website is live on the internet, but this doesn't work for us because our website is currently hosted locally in our development server. So this IP address that we have over here, 127.0.0.1, this is a local IP address. So no one else can access our website. So here we have 2 other methods. We can validate by file upload or by direct input. In this case, I'm going to go with file upload. So let's upload our index.html file and check. So look, we have 1 warning and 2 errors. The warning is saying that we haven't added the lang or language attribute to the HTML start tag. This is a common best practice because with this we can tell search engines what is the language of this web page, so they can do a better job at displaying the results. This is very easy to fix. So here's our HTML tag. We're going to add the lang attribute and set it to EN, which is short for English. Now what is next? We have an error saying the character encoding was not declared. Don't worry about this. We'll talk about this in the next section. So let's look at the second error. It's saying that an image element must have an alt attribute. So earlier we had this alt attribute. I told you that we use the alt attribute to provide a description for our image. So if the image cannot be displayed, the alternative text will be displayed. Again, we're going to talk about the alt attribute in more detail in the future. So back to our code. Let's fix this error real quick. Here's our image tag. Let's add the alt attribute. And for the description, I'm going to say an image of Mosh Hamedani. Now save the changes. Let's re-upload the file and validate it one more time. Okay. This time we have only a single error, and that has to do with character encoding, which we're going to talk about in the next section. So this is all about HTML validation. Now for CSS, we have a different validator. So we go to jigsaw.w3 www.ecosystem.org/css-val.